Today, Donald Trump slapped China clear across the face in two major moves. He has ordered China's ByteDance to sell TikTok in the US, essentially divest from one of the most popular and rising social media apps, sell it off to American interests. Rumor is Microsoft might buy it. Now, this is actually kind of a compromise. Trump is saying he still may ban TikTok in the US because they've been accused of spying, stealing people's personal information in this country. They've been caught taking certain data, and then when they've said, oh no, we fixed it, it was an accident, they got caught again. And many people are concerned they're basically spying on US, mostly youths, for China. Now, whether or not that's true, Donald Trump is taking hard action. Although he's not banning the app, he wants them to sell it to US interests. There's some considerations here pertaining to big tech, because a lot of people were concerned that these big tech monopolies are too powerful, control too much of the public square. And now by forcing ByteDance to sell, they're just going to empower another company, notably Microsoft. But there is other very serious action underway. Donald Trump is sanctioning a paramilitary group in China's Xinjiang over their abuses towards ethnic minorities and notably the Uighur Muslims. Now, these are two very different stories, but this is all about the bigger picture of Trump being strong against China. And I have to say, I am very personally, I'm going to get very opinionated right now. I'm actually really happy and impressed with Donald Trump's moves here. China is a very serious threat to global security. They're an authoritarian dictatorship. And what they're doing in Hong Kong and to the Uighur Muslims are absolutely horrifying and nightmarish. While the actions that Donald Trump has taken today, I think are good, very good. The TikTok thing, I kind of say, sure, whatever. It's one app. Obviously, a lot of young people are going to kind of freak out. But the sanctions against the paramilitary in Xinjiang, now this, I don't know what the right action is. All I can say is I'm glad to see the president taking hard actions against China. For those that aren't familiar, this is graphic and horrifying, but they have concentration camps filled with Uighur Muslims. These are human beings. These are people, and the things they're doing to them are so horrifying. I'm going to wait and explain to you the depth of the depravity and why what Donald Trump has done here is so important. But I absolutely must point out, foreign policy says, when it comes to China, Americans think like Trump. Recent data suggests that most voters share the White House's hawkish approach to China. Now, we can talk about TikTok because I think this is going to affect Americans the most. But we definitely need to talk about what China has been doing to the Uighur Muslims. We'll talk about Majid Nawaz and his hunger strike. Donald Trump taking action here is extremely important. These people are in concentration camps. You need to realize how serious this is. But I do think because TikTok is so, it's going to affect Americans more seriously. Let's talk about this first. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do, subscribe. About half the people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed. So if you want to make sure you are getting every video I put out, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And if you really want to help, share this video, especially considering we're going to talk about some very serious issues. I have to be very careful how I describe what's going on with China and the Uighur Muslims because YouTube is very censorious. And I absolutely want to make sure that most people have an understanding about how serious this is and why it is very good that Donald Trump is doing what he's doing. Now, I think the move with TikTok is very strategic, and I'm impressed. Banning TikTok was freaking people out. This is a very popular app. It is growing very quickly. Young people use it. And it's not just young leftists. There are Trump supporters who use it as well. People like the app. Banning this could make people... Well, it could lose a lot of money for Americans who use it for their own businesses. Young people run their businesses through TikTok as influencers, and it could be generally disruptive. This way, with what Trump is doing, the app will remain. People can still use it. No one's got to worry. No one's got to freak out. And Trump is protecting us from Chinese spying. Let's read from Bloomberg. They say, Trump to order China's ByteDance to sell TikTok in U.S. Donald Trump plans to announce a decision ordering China's ByteDance to divest its ownership of the popular U.S.-based music video app TikTok, according to people familiar with the matter. The U.S. has been investigating potential national security risks due to the company's control of the app, and Trump's decision could be announced as soon as Friday. Spokespeople for the White House and Treasury Department didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. A TikTok spokesperson couldn't be reached for comment. Snap Inc., a TikTok competitor, gained on the report, reflecting speculation that it may benefit from any move that weakens TikTok. Shares of the Santa Monica, California-based company were up 2 points. It's Bloomberg. What do you expect? They care about the finance. ByteDance bought Musical.ly Inc. in 2017 and merged it with TikTok, creating a popular and fast-growing social media hit in the U.S., the first Chinese app to make such inroads. As TikTok grew more popular, U.S. officials grew more concerned about the potential for the Chinese government to use the app to gain data on U.S. citizens. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., which investigates overseas acquisition of U.S. businesses, began a review of the purchase in the fall of 2019, according to a person familiar with the investigation. TikTok has become a political pawn between the U.S. and China, and elected officials have criticized the app's security and privacy practices, suggesting that user data collected through the app might be shared with the Chinese government. Trump said earlier this month he was considering banning TikTok as a way to retaliate against China for its handling of the coronavirus. No, slow down. Banning the app like Japan is now announcing, like India has done, because they are spying on our citizens. We are dangerously close to a very serious military conflict with China. It is very likely that we are already engaged in hostilities with China and that they have been the ones instigating this. They've been stealing intellectual property. They've been pushing into the South China Sea. There's reports of them sinking Vietnamese fishing boats. They are probably hacking our email accounts. I don't have the sources pulled up, but the Chinese government has been accused, I should say, in a sense accused. They use private hacking groups to infiltrate American companies. Yes, hostilities are underway, and they've been underway for quite some time. The fear is that things like this, the overt spying on American citizens, could result in a hot war. Now, there's other issues pertaining to China's control of a social media app, notably how they can ban people who might say negative things about China. I have concerns about that being on YouTube. Like I said, I'm starting with the story about TikTok because we really need to talk about the Uighur Muslims. There are many impressive individuals. Majid Nawaz, you may be familiar with him. He's an intellectual dark web type personality, engaged in a hunger strike to get 100,000 signatures on a petition calling for action, something against China because of what they're doing to these people. But it's possible I could get this video sanctioned, I could get banned, and every time I do a video talking about the atrocities that China is engaged in, guess what happens? A bunch of weird propaganda pops up, lying about who I am, what I believe, and what I think in an effort to get me banned on platforms like YouTube. That's why I think we need to talk about TikTok. If TikTok does become very powerful and prominent and supersedes or takes over in the U.S., then we will be beholden to Chinese interests in terms of communication. I do not believe that we can allow that as a free, to an extent, country. And I believe Trump is making the right move. I gotta say, I'm really impressed with this decision. Banning TikTok would have been a bit over the top, but it may have had to have happened. It looks like Trump found a solution. Now, according to Jennifer Jacobs, senior reporter for Bloomberg, who did write, I believe she contributed to this article as well. Yes, she did. She says, Trump, before leaving for Florida, tells me may ban TikTok, but still looking at a lot of alternatives. Good on the president for taking a slow approach. Look, man, nobody should want a hot war, especially with China. There's going to be weird. I'm going to avoid speculating too much into what would happen if a hot war does start. But there are very serious security implications as to why they're making these moves. Bloomberg closes out by saying, Trump's threat to ban TikTok came just a few weeks after reports that many TikTok users had tried to sabotage a Trump campaign rally. I think that is irrelevant. TikTok has been looking for ways to distance itself from its Chinese ownership, seeking to reassure the public that no data is stored on servers in China and that the app operates independently. ByteDance even appointed a CEO formerly of Walt Disney Co., Kevin Mayer, to run its operations in America. This is almost 4D chess, man. If they're coming out and saying, no, trust us, we're not beholden to China, then Trump goes, okay, then divest from those interests. How about you sell to an American company? How about that? Prosperity for everybody. Nobody gets banned. We'll see how they respond. But here is the hard, more militaristic news. Look at this image. For those that are just listening, it is a dragon in a bird cage. I saw this story. I'm impressed. I'm glad action is being taken. We are the United States of America. We fought the Nazis and we won. We shut them down. We crushed them and their authoritarian ideology. We engaged in a Cold War for a very long time against the authoritarianism of the Soviet Union, and we crushed them as well. Now we are facing a very serious threat from China. I would love it if diplomacy won out and China began to adopt more freedom-loving ideas, liberty-minded ideals, if they respected the freedom of those in Hong Kong and they stopped oppressing the Uighur Muslims. It does not seem like they will be willing to do that. And in fact, many of our own corporations, notably the NBA, among others, are willing to bend the knee to China because the money is just too good. Well, we cannot have this. If we as Americans truly believe in opposing oppression, especially those on the left, the intersectionalists, then this should come as welcome news that action is being taken against the paramilitary in Xinjiang over their oppression of the Uighur Muslims. Let's read this story from Axios. They say, the Trump administration has announced it will sanction the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps, a paramilitary organization operating in Xinjiang, where Chinese authorities, aided by the XPCC, are perpetrating a cultural and demographic genocide against ethnic minorities. Why it matters. XPCC controls vast swaths of the economy in Xinjiang. Depending on how rigorously the sanctions are enforced, they could hobble the region's economy and blunt China's plans for further economic development in the region. The Trump administration also said it would sanction 2 Chinese Communist Party officials affiliated with the XPCC, according to a press release from the Department of the Treasury. Quote, as previously stated, the United States is committed to using the full breadth of its financial powers to hold human rights abusers accountable in Xinjiang and across the world, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said in a statement. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also announced the sanctions on Twitter, writing, we call on the world to join us in condemning the CCP's heinous abuse of the human rights of its own citizens. The sanctions fall under the Global Magnitsky Act, implemented in 2016 to make it easier for the U.S. government to sanction foreign government officials and entities complicit in human rights abuses. Now, I want to read a little bit more, but I want to point out recently, Mike Pompeo traveled to Europe trying to drum up support from European allies to go up against China in some capacity to stop what they are doing. With the oppression of the people of Hong Kong, they're delaying the elections there now. There have been ongoing protests and rioting, and notably, the very serious genocide against the Uighur Muslims. I'll tell you, man, what they're doing to these people is what nightmares are made of. I'm gonna come out and say it. All right. They're harvesting organs of human beings and reportedly selling them. There was a report that they were selling the hair of these people as they force them to shave their heads and put them in re-education camps. They are forcefully aborting babies and sterilizing people. This is truly the worst humanity has to offer. And Donald Trump has taken moves against them over these atrocities. I hope other countries start speaking up. And I am incredibly inspired by the likes of Maajid Nawaz, who went on a hunger strike and did get signatures demanding Parliament in the UK speak up against this as well. I hope people can set aside their differences. I don't care what you believe. This should be a unifying force for us as Americans. And good on Donald Trump. Good on his administration for taking these actions. They say little known outside of China, the XPCC, also known as the Bingtuan, meaning military unit in Chinese, is a powerful, secretive organization that has dominated Xinjiang's economy and politics for decades. It employs almost 12% of Xinjiang's total population, though very few of those employees come from the non-Han ethnic groups that comprise nearly half of the region's population. The XPCC is involved in the production of 1/3 of China's cotton, and in 2014, XPCC controlled interests comprised of 17% of Xinjiang's economy. The Xinjiang government views the XPCC as playing crucial roles in fighting terror and maintaining stability, a reference to the draconian security state that authorities have forced on Uyghurs and other Muslim groups there. Here's what they add. This is a huge move by the Trump administration and a major win for human rights advocates who have raised the alarm about the XPCC's role in running the mass internment camps. In addition, enforcing sanctions on such a sprawling and secretive organization is an enormous undertaking. How much these sanctions bite depends a great deal on how many resources the administration is willing to commit to uncovering violations and enforcing them. What to watch? The Chinese government is certain to view this as a major provocation and as a violation of their domestic sovereignty. Retaliatory measures are likely. Well, I'll tell you what, 100% bravo, Trump and the Trump administration. Something needs to be done. The American people agree. Now, this is an article from Foreign Policy. I don't know exactly if they're going to be talking about the Uyghurs or economic issues, but we cannot sit by and do nothing. Let me tell you all, I am absolutely 100% anti-intervention. 100%. But the problem, maybe 100% is the wrong way to frame it. Maybe it's 99.9%. I am absolutely thrilled when Donald Trump has tried to pull our troops out of Afghanistan. We don't have that many left relative to other countries. He's trying to move troops out of Germany. We'll see if that really happens because Germany's not paying their NATO bills. There are a lot of concerns I have about the money we spend sending our sending our military to foreign locations, wasting our resources as far as I can tell. Now, maybe there are good reasons for it. Notably in the Middle East, there's concerns that if we do pull out, China will move in, and then they will gain a strategic foothold in this region. It is absolutely true that China is engaging in a ton of international operations in Africa and South America, including oil exploration, and we are at major odds. They are a serious adversary, and they are growing in power. I don't know what the answers are to all of these problems, and I wouldn't pretend to. I'm not in the military, nor have I seen top secret or confidential information pertaining to this. But I do know that we have a line, that we have to have a red line. And I think the first thing we can do, sanctions, diplomacy, makes a lot of sense. Force China to abandon the concentration camps. Now, I personally would like to see the people who have perpetrated these crimes face trial. It is very difficult to pull that off. It would mean a literal ground invasion to actually capture some of these officials. I don't think that's possible. These people who've implemented these atrocities need to stand trial for their crimes, as far as I'm concerned. But if at the very least Trump's actions prevent a war and stop what China is doing, then I believe it will be one of the greatest moves as a president in the history of this country. Preventing war and stopping atrocities, that's a win-win across the board. Again, I'm not going to pretend to know. I think that's silly. You're going to hear from a lot of people who will say, here's what Trump should do, here's what he shouldn't do. Of course, we're probably going to hear a lot from the left saying, oh, Trump is playing with fire. The last thing we need is him to blah, blah, blah. No way, man. We've got concentration camps in China right now. The Uighur Muslims having their organs harvested, forced abortion, according to the Associated Press. So I welcome any actions that can potentially prevent war and put pressure on China to make this stop. Now, to a certain degree, it seems that Americans agree. The foreign policy reports. Large majorities of the U.S. public, both Democrats and Republicans, align with the Trump administration's dismal view of China, giving the embattled president a potential appealing drum to bang in an increasingly uphill reelection campaign. Now, I will tell you what, man. If Trump takes a hard stance and does what he has to do, to prevent war and stop the concentration camps, he absolutely has my vote. 100%. Joe Biden is not the appropriate response right now to the threat we face from China, but it's not even about us. I know there are a lot of nationalists who support Trump. I mean, that's one of his go-to appeals. I am not an overt nationalist. You may have seen I recently published my 8 values test. I'm like 2/3 more for international diplomacy. My concern is that human beings right now are being placed in concentration camps. That's my concern. And that should be a concern for everybody. But more importantly, regardless of whether you're concerned about the human rights abuses, which of course I think most people are, there's also very serious threats to our freedom, to the freedom of other countries. And I think whether you're someone who believes in international diplomacy or a more America first approach, you can believe in both. I understand. Depending on what you favor in terms of your perspective, we can all agree this is a very powerful move and something needs to be done because of China's egregious violations. According to the survey, 73% of Americans hold an unfavorable view of China, up from 47% just 2 years ago. The main complaints echo President Donald Trump, the nature of the two countries' economic relationship, and China's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Some 64% surveyed felt that China had done a bad job handling the pandemic, and 78% believe the Chinese government deserves at least some of the blame for the global spread of the virus. Meanwhile, more than 2/3 of respondents said U.S.-China economic relations were in bad shape. While Republicans are more likely to hold a negative view of China on most issues than Democrats, U.S.-China economic ties particularly concern Democrats, with 73% saying relations are bad, 10 percentage points more than Republicans, which could offer Trump a lifeline in must-win Rust Belt states hit hard by years of Chinese economic depredation and the ongoing trade war. So listen, this is mostly, presumably, it's about, economic issues. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that our factories, our jobs, many of these were sent overseas to China, which hurt the Rust Belt severely. These trade agreements that Donald Trump opposed, and so did Bernie Sanders for quite a bit, I don't know where he's at now, it resonated with a lot of people who knew that our middle class was being siphoned away by politicians who favored China. Donald Trump, for the past decade, probably longer, has been very critical of China, has been very critical of these free trade agreements. It's one of the reasons he got elected. I believe that if Joe Biden wins, he will revert everything back to the way it was. The Obama administration wanted to enter something called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The idea was that it would normalize the economy between the U.S. and China, and they claimed that this would make China more liberal and democratic. Only problem? The inverse was true. They exploited our resources, and they made us become more authoritarian like them. Case in point, the NBA. On the NBA's website, you couldn't enter Free Hong Kong as a custom jersey name because it would just give you a random error. Now, they said it was a glitch. Once they removed the glitch, they just nuked the whole program. Now you can't buy custom jerseys. Maybe they'll restore it. I'm not sure where we're at now. But we've seen many American companies bend the knee to China. I need you to realize what happens if we do not take a hard stand now. With people like Joe Biden and the Obama administration's favor towards China, to all of the crony establishment politicians who would sell us out to multinational corporations, what was happening is that this country was becoming emboldened, empowered, and no one would hold them accountable. Even to this day, as they pump out carbon emissions, those of us that have been saying, hey, we got to protect the environment and global warming is a serious issue, we hear nothing from these international organizations about the problems we face because China won't stop pumping out the bulk, a large portion of carbon emissions. Where are the complaints? There's no accountability. Why? In my opinion, multinational billion-dollar corporations and special interests don't actually care. They want to make money, and that's their path to making money. They like the idea that they can get a quick buck if China's pumping out carbon emissions, if they're abusing people for cheap labor. And that's what they're doing. Interestingly, we saw a hearing the other day about big tech monopolies, and some questions were asked about whether or not these big tech CEOs would pledge not to use Chinese slave labor. And boy, were they wishy-washy. They were asked, does China engage in stealing our intellectual property? And what did we hear from, what did we hear from like Apple and Jeff Bezos? Oh, I don't know anything about that. And then interestingly, what did we hear from Mark Zuckerberg? Zuckerberg said, of course they're stealing our technology. And I was impressed by that. It's about time we put our foot down. And this is why I'm scared that we may revert back to the previous administration's policies of placating and just handing over our resources and letting China do whatever they want. I'm not going to be thrilled about that. I'm not thrilled at all about the potential for that future. And so it leads me to a rather interesting predicament. Look, after India and US, Japan looks to ban Tick-Tock and other Chinese apps. And that was the other day. And now I'm hearing reports that they're actually going to do it. So what happens if Trump loses? I think it'll be politics as usual. China will be re-emboldened. They'll get all our factories back. You know, we don't make our own medicine. When the coronavirus hit, we didn't have the PPE we needed. They blamed Trump, but the reality was our factories were in China and China turned the boats around. So we need to be stronger as a nation to for our own interests, but also because America has been a beacon of hope for so many other countries. We provide tremendous aid. If we don't secure our own oxygen mask first, we won't be conscious to help those around us. This brings me to that predicament I mentioned. I've never been the biggest fan of Trump as a politician. When it comes to his entertainment and his comedy, yeah, I think he's a funny guy, of course. I think you're lying or you have no sense of humor if you reject the idea that Trump is a funny guy. But I would prefer more of a professional statesman. But I'll tell you what, I'll take what I can get. And right now, Joe Biden's not the answer. And so begrudgingly, I am leaning towards, very strongly, a vote for Donald Trump. The reason I say not definitively is because there's a lot that's going to happen between now and November. And there could be certainly some things that make me change my mind. But as it stands today, Donald Trump is proving more and more on foreign policy that I think he's making the right choices. Withdrawing our troops from Afghanistan, I'll give him a standing ovation for that, though he was blocked by Democrats and Republicans alike, except for a small handful, 8 Republicans and 3 Democrats. Now these moves against Tick-Tock and sanctioning China, I'm happy about it. I am. Listen, I'm not the smartest person in the world. I would never claim to be, and I get things wrong all of the time. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on these stories. It could be that there's a lot I don't know about what's happening, but to the best of my understanding, we must do something. And it sounds like Trump is doing things that are actually a bit clever, forcing China to divest, of Tick-Tock. Well, there we go. That solves the problems. The company doesn't get hurt. The users don't get hurt, and we protect ourselves from the potential Chinese spying. So this is good. Is it perfect? No. Are there problems? Probably. Could this get worse? Yes. But again, I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. I'm just glad to see that we have a president who's taken some hard sanctions against China, notably over their mistreatment, the genocide of the Uighur Muslims. Please, you need to let people know about what's going on there. I have talked to my progressive friends, and they said, I didn't know that was happening. They need to know. So please consider sharing that information, whether you share this video or not. Let people know about what they're doing. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all then.